Hello, Christian Metal Group. We're on here to do another great interview. I'm Jimmy. I'm one of the admins, longtime metalhead. We got Jay.
Yeah, moderator and longtime metalhead.
Yes. And Zachariah. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am not as much of a longtime metalhead because I'm not as old as you guys are.
Nice.
But I am the vocalist for Blue Fire Horizon, but that's not really what we're here talking about today. We are talking about the Blue Fire Digital Network. I am one of the podcast hosts and one of the co-founders of the network, I suppose. What the goal of it is to be basically a one-stop shop for Christian podcasts. You want podcasts to listen to, you can find them here. As of right now, there are 5 active podcasts on the network. It was originally started with the War is Everything podcast, which was my co-founder Hunter, who due to some scheduling stuff can't be here, and myself interviewing and talking to other bands in the Christian metal scene, listening to their music, getting to know them a little bit, and right. Then from there, it was Hunter's idea to kind of branch out and bring in some other close friends of ours that we've met and, through other things, and kind of start some other podcasts with them and give them an opportunity to, since we had an audience already, and they had interest in starting podcasts, let's kind of do it together so we can kind of share our audience and promote them a little bit. So that was kind of where the idea for the network came about. As of right now, like I said, we have the War is Everything podcast, which is hosted by myself and Hunter. Then we have the Godly Fathers podcast, which is a podcast by Morgan Monroe from the band Tundra. And the whole idea behind that is a podcast to help learn and grow specifically for fathers. He says, if mothers and women want to listen to, sure, go ahead. But it's specifically for fathers to help learn and grow in how to be a father, because Morgan himself just became a father and he's learning and growing in that too. And an opportunity for him to share his experiences through that and all that kind of fun stuff. Then we also have the Christian Storyteller Chronicles. That's what it is, which is hosted by Hunter and AC Peckham. He is a author. I know he's written more than that, but I know specifically he's a children's author. He's written a handful of children's books. And so the point of that podcast is to just kind of talk about Christian storytellers, either, artists or musicians or really anyone that tells a story, from a Christian perspective. And then today, the first episode of the Roaring Rocks podcast, well, as of recording right now, February 1st, the first episode of the Roaring Rocks podcast dropped, which is just Hunter himself. And that is for worship leaders and other leaders in the church, and kind of the background of, we go to church on Sunday morning, but we don't see everything that goes on during the week, and on Sunday morning behind the scenes, and kind of a insight into all of that, because Hunter himself has been a worship leader for 10 years, so it's a way to kind of see what goes on behind the scenes.
Oh, that's very nice. That's interesting. I'm sure that's a niche that, I haven't heard of podcasts that does that. So that's awesome.
Right.
Well, all right. So I'm not sure if you're calling us old. I don't know if you're like 15 or 16. I'm not real sure where you're at, but I know you have a newborn, so I hope you're a little older than that. But
little bit.
So let's back up. So tell us, when did you become a believer?
I was raised in the church. I guess you could say I always have been. If you want to point to a time that I actually got serious about my own faith, I would say it was in my late teens, 19, 20 years old, maybe. I had gone through some stuff, had decided, I was done with this whole Christianity thing. I'm sick of it. God's not doing stuff for me. So, why should I stick around? Right. But, yeah, that's not what that's all about. So somewhere around 19, 20 years old, God kind of gave me a slap on the backside of the head and said, "Get it together, stupid." And
Hey, it's
at
part
that
of
point, I kind of
part
came
of the
back to
journey.
him.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I love that. So yeah, so now we've talked about becoming a Christian. Let's talk about your introduction to metal. So what was your first introduction to metal? And how'd you get involved in that?
So kind of interesting. Just yesterday, I saw in my memories on Facebook a question that I had asked all my friends. I'm like, most people don't start by listening to, brutal slamming death metal, right? You don't just go to that, And so my question was, give me a list of bands in like descending order that shows the progression of where you started. And I don't remember specifically exactly what order I had all of them in, but at about 13 years old, I was listening to Reliant K.
Oh, wow.
And then, so it was Reliant K, Skillet, Disciple, Spoken, Memphis Mayfire, For Today, Impending Doom, Lorna Shore. That's that's about
awesome.
like the order of where I went. So these days, yeah, it's hard to find something that's too heavy for me to want to listen to,
So Disciple, would you say that was kind of your introduction to the first kind of heavy band?
Yeah. I actually, my gateway band, I say is Spoken. So when I first discovered
Spoken.
When I first discovered Spoken, I did listen to some Disciple at the time, but even some of the Disciple stuff was like, it's a little bit heavy for me, guys, So I stuck more with like the hard rock side of Disciple and Skillet and Red and bands like that. Mm-hmm. And what I used to do, I scroll through Facebook and open up YouTube on my computer and just listen to whatever was recommended based off of other bands that I listened to. And the song Through It All by Spoken came up. And if you know that song, yeah, it's like a rock ballad, it's not super heavy or anything like that. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is really good. So I bought their album Illusion, mm-hmm, put it in my CD player, and the first song started. And the first song on that album is Stand Alone, which is very much not a hard rock song. And it kind of took me by surprise a little bit. And I didn't listen to most of that album. I listened to like the 4 softer hard rock songs on that album. But like over time, I started, listening to those other songs a little bit more and more and more. And then eventually it was, well, what other bands sound like this? And, from there, it just went downhill from there.
Do you remember how did you discover Spoken? Was it just a song online or?
Yeah, it was just, I would just listen to like mostly Skillet at the time. I was really big into Skillet, and other bands would just be recommended on YouTube. And I'd be like, oh, who's this one? I've never heard of them, and click on that and see if I like it. And they were just one of those bands that got recommended on YouTube. And
wow.
I used to book concerts, and I got to book Spoken a couple of times, and that Matt Baird, I still stay in contact with him. He's a good guy. True. He's awesome.
Yeah. We actually, just opened up for them a couple weeks ago.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Wisconsin.
Yeah. Nice. Did he sign your Bible or anything or?
No, he didn't.
He signed your Bible. I love it.
No, okay. The poor guy. Yeah. The poor guy spent most of his time in the question and answer, answering the same person, asking question after question.
Oh no.
So this along the same lines. I mean, that's kind of how you got into it. But just growing up, what are some of your favorite bands growing up?
Growing up, honestly, up until I hit like 13 years old when I started listening to Reliant K, I really didn't listen to music.
Okay.
It was something that like, I think it honestly is because none of the bands that my family listened to or any of the artists, I didn't really connect with any of them. I didn't really like any of them. So in my mind, I honestly was like, I don't really like music. Not really my thing, until I discovered, Reliant K. And then I was like, oh yeah, this is good. I like this, and then Skillet. Wow. When I discovered Skillet, that's when music really started to like click for me. Like, okay, now this is what I want to listen to kind of thing. So yeah, growing up, I didn't really listen to a ton of music. My siblings and my parents were all really big into the Beatles, which respect to the Beatles, they did a lot for music in general, but like, I take it, I could take it or leave it.
Right. I totally relate to that. Absolutely. That's funny. I mean, it just reminds me so much of my upbringing. It seems like to a lot of people, Skillet was okay. So me and Jimmy, like, we're kind of close in age. And I think for us, Petra was like the gateway drug for so many people, especially like growing up in the 80s, you know what I'm saying? Maybe the early 90s, like Petra was the thing. I definitely remember when Skillet came out, because by that time I was like reading HM magazine, and I remember seeing an advertisement for them and for Bleach, and they were on Forefront Records at that time. That's when they came. Bleach.
I love going to Barnes and Noble and looking at the magazines and be like, man, you know, Skillet's, you know, there's a Christian band in this magazine, you know, or Demon Hunter, or As I Lay Dying was huge. They were, you know, they blew up.
Yeah, I remember that. They had a bunch of articles. I remember there was an article in some magazine that I probably still have.
I got some.
As I Lay Dying, Demon Hunter, and maybe Melee Sons of Disaster, and cover. You remember that?
Yes, I have that one. They actually did a whole spread on just Christian bands. Yep.
Yes. Yeah.
I have one question.
Yeah.
What's a magazine?
Don't worry about it. You know, just go to Walmart and just look. Go to the middle of Walmart.
They might be in I don't know if they have them at Walmart. You have to go to a thrift store.
Yo, I know that. What's that store called? It's like some bookstore. I was about to say Half Price Books, but no, that's more local. But yeah, Barnes and Noble should have metal magazines.
Second Charles?
Books, yeah, Second and Charles, Books a Million definitely has a big section of music magazines. I think that's the most expansive modern book section that I've seen is in Books a Million magazine. Yeah. Especially, you know, metal magazines. All of the ones, like stuff I didn't even realize still existed, is in Books a Million. That's funny. Okay, let's talk about concerts. Who are some of your favorite live bands?
The best show that I've ever seen live is a band that I don't even listen to myself. So I was there to see Red, okay? And opening up for them was Project 86.
Oh, God. Great.
Never really gotten into Project 86. I've tried. I don't know. I just don't really get it, you know? But they put on such a high energy show. That place was rocking to the point that like it felt like a letdown when Red came out onto the stage.
Oh, I'm sure.
It was like best show I've ever been to, hands down. Not only that, but I get a funny story out of it too, because show's about to start. It's 9:00 at night at an outdoor festival. So like it's dark, right? And music starts kind of coming in a little bit quiet, and there's a big bass drop and you hear footsteps running out onto the stage, and then a loud bang, and the lights all come on, and Andrew Schwab had tripped over the monitor and is lying face down on the subwoofers in front of the stage, but he's just singing away right there because the vocals come in right away. So for the first like 30 seconds of the song, he's just lying on the subwoofers in front of the stage.
Wow,
that is awesome.
And my sister and I were there, and we were like front row center stage. So it was literally like 3 feet in front of us that he's just lying there singing away.
That is awesome. I am an unashamedly Project 86 fan since the first album. I've always loved them. I pre-ordered the newest album, their last album that's come out. And to the best of my recollection, I've probably seen them about 15 times.
Wow. I've seen them maybe once or twice.
Yeah. I've every chance I got when they come to the area, I would go see them. And one of them was like the Christian Day Fest or whatever at Carowinds. And I remember we had just missed, we were late, and I was mad because I wanted to see what's the Mutant Math's old band, Earthsuit had just got off stage. Project 86 got on there, and I remember the drummer breaking 2 snare heads in 5 minutes. I mean, they were so intense. And that was also the first and last time I ever got in a mosh pit with flip-flops on. Not a good idea.
Yeah.
Not a good.
Yeah, don't do that again. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
their new material sounds really heavy from what I've heard.
I love it. Yeah.
Super good.
So Zachary, have you had to deal with backlash in the Christian metal industry? And if so, how have you dealt with it?
The biggest backlash that I've received from the Christian metal industry itself is because people don't like the way that we promote ourselves.
We've seen that. People get confused. It's so funny. It's an ongoing joke at this point.
So you don't actually practice in a dumpster. That's not.
No, there's not enough room. We practice in our drummer's basement, but we just empty the garbage cans out around us, so that it feels like a big dumpster.
There we go.
Yeah.
Have you had backlash outside of the Christian community?
There is a local guy that runs, I'm not gonna name any names or anything like that because that's unfair to him, but he runs like a conglomerate of Christian venues in the area that he did let us know that because we played at a bar that we are not welcome to play at his Christian venues because he doesn't want people to think that we condone the bar scene.
Wow.
I tried to explain to him, like, man, we don't drink. We're not there to drink. We're there to be witnesses.
Right.
And we're going where the people that need to hear it are, but
well, Jesus only would go to a church anyway. So
right. Exactly. He didn't go to the homes of tax collectors and sinners and eat and drink with them. He didn't do that.
No. Awesome.
Let's talk about ministry versus industry, because that seems to be a huge topic of discussion among, I guess, in the Christian world, especially when it comes to music. For example, some people feel like if you're in a Christian band, if you call yourself a Christian and you're doing music, your music has to be ministry minded. And then a lot of people feel like if you're getting paid to do music, then you're giving into the industry or whatever. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on this whole phenomenon?
So I think if you look at even a church, a church cannot function unless it has some money coming in to support it.
Amen.
So anyone that's like, Christian bands, they shouldn't be taking money and making money because that's not fair. That's not right. Well, how else are they going to keep making the music if they don't make money off of it? Then all you would have are all the little underground self-mixed bands that do everything themselves. And some of them sound good, but some of them sound not so good. So, but there are bands that have different goals and different purposes. And there are some bands that their goal is to minister to Christians, and their goal is to encourage them and build them up and, minister to them in one way or another. Some bands' purpose is outreach. They don't want to be playing all the Christian festivals and all the Christian venues and shows. They want to be out where the lost are. And again, I use this analogy in another podcast that if you look at a church itself, you have pastors, you have teachers, you have Sunday school teachers, you have missionaries. You need missionaries, the ones to go out and reach the lost. You need the Sunday school teachers to be there to help teach the kids. You need the pastors to shepherd the sheep. So if you look at the Christian music industry like a church, you need the ministry, the missionary bands, the ones going out to reach the lost. We also need the ones that are making the music for the Christians to encourage them. So to try to be like, well, this is what a Christian band has to look like is like saying everyone in a church needs to be a pastor, or everyone in a church needs to be a missionary going to another country. That's not how it works. It's one body with many parts. That's the way it is, both in a church and in the music scene.
Yeah, I think that's interesting you say that, because I do find that even a lot of churches, there's definitely a mentality they have. Like they're very much gatekeepers and they're very comfortable where they are. And a lot of churches don't seem to focus on evangelism at all. I think it's kind of tragic, actually, because you know. Then we wonder why like the church is ineffective in the world overall, and why like the world is taking such a big turn away from like what it may have used to been.
It's like Scripture says, we're all different parts of the body, and I mean this is a part of the body. Maybe they think that, I don't know, metal music is not part of the body. I mean, thank God for our other ministry partners such as Pastor Bob and Sanctuary International. I mean, he's been doing metal ministry for 50 years. We got the Metal Bible, which is amazing. But even with all this and the the times are changing, I guess tattoos are normalized now and all that type of thing.
Yeah.
The metal community still seems like a taboo mission field to most churches. So why is that, and what can we do about it?
I don't know. I think that it's one of those things that it'll just over time kind of become less taboo in the same way. I've said it for years now that in 20 years there won't be a company that won't hire someone for, because they have tattoos. Or like when I worked at a gas station here in Wisconsin, Quick Trip is huge. There's a Quick Trip on like every corner.
Yeah, same here.
I had to wear long sleeves when I worked there because I had to cover up the tattoos. That's not the case anymore. A couple of years ago, they, got rid of that rule. And I said, even when I was there, give it 20 years for this, not to sound insensitive, but the oldest generation to die off. And nobody's going to care because every generation after that has tattoos.
Right.
There'll always be a couple people that are offended by it, but give it 20 years and there's not going to be a company that's like, well, you have to cover those up because you have to.
Well, that's a valid point. But with Christian metal, here we are 50 years later, and churches still don't see it as a mission field. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, man.
Yeah, I really don't. I don't get it.
Don't either.
Looks like your baby doesn't get it either. Like,
Yeah, he's getting mad about people not liking Christian metal.
Me too.
No, honestly though, I do think that like 80s metal bands, I've had this discussion before that they're closer to hard rock than what most, when you think of metal bands today, you think the screaming, you think the heavy down dude and stuff.
True.
Metal bands of the 80s are closer to like what we think of as hard rock. And that's far more acceptable today than it was back then. I think the biggest thing that people get offended by nowadays is the harsh vocal styles.
Yeah, this is true.
So if Striper, for an example, were to come around today, like they are a new band today, there would be far fewer people that are offended by their music or turned away from it or against it than there were back in the 80s.
That's valid.
The thing that's not acceptable these days is the harsh vocal styles, because everyone's like, oh, it just sounds like demons, it's scary sounding, so it must be evil.
What do demons sound like, though, right?
Right. I had a guy, not friends with him on Facebook anymore. He unfriended me after this interaction. I'm okay with it. I had a guy tell me that vocal style is demonic, period. Hard stop, it's demonic. I'm like, okay. He didn't really know who I was. I have a lot of people that add me because they see, oh, he's in a band. So I took a short screen recording of the second verse of our song, The Hollow, because I hit some real nasty gutturals in that song. And a 10-second clip of that, and commented that. I'm like, what about this? Is this demonic? He's like, yeah, that sounds demonic, man. I'm like, that's me.
Nice.
He unfriended me after that. He didn't reply, didn't say anything, just unfriended me after that.
I love it. That's so fun.
So yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge, is trying to convince people that it's just your voice. There's nothing demonic about it. there isn't. Like, anyone can do that with practice. It's a skill. It's not, dear Satan, please enter into me and make me be able to sound like that. It's not what do people think that we're doing over here?
Right.
Not only that, but if you think about it, if you are convinced that type of music is satanic, then Christian metal makes no sense, because a house divided against itself cannot stand. How can Satan drive out Satan?
Yeah.
The lyrics of Christian metal are Christian and anti-Satan. That would be Satan fighting against himself, using his own voice and possessing people to make music that's against him. Logic.
I've read that somewhere. That's good.
Yeah, I don't know, somewhere.
Awesome.
Hilarious. All right. Well, let's talk about this. So give us some history behind the inspiration and formation of Blue Fire. Actually, you talked about the podcast. Let me go with this one instead, because I'm wearing a blue hat. I'm drinking blue juice.
Okay.
Why blue versus red? Like why Blue Fire Horizon versus like Red Fire Horizon or Green Fire Horizon? Yeah.
So our former guitar. So full disclosure, that was not going to be the original name of the band. We had a different name picked out, and 2 days before we created our Facebook page and uploaded our first single and everything, so like before it had to be finalized, our guitars was, this has a cool ring to it. What about Blue Fire Horizon? I'm like, that has a really good ring to it. And, all the members agreed. And we're like, what's it mean? I don't know. It sounds cool. So we kind of were like, okay, it sounds cool. Let's give it a meeting. So we kind of dug into it. And blue is historically used to symbolize faith, among other things, but faith.
Okay.
Fire represents something burning, and people, a burning passion, a burning longing, right? And horizon is something far away, something in the future. So you smush it all together, and what we decided that it means is it's our faith in and longing for the point in the future when Jesus returns.
Nice. That's awesome. My high school, we didn't have like a cool tiger mascot. We were the Blue Flames. Okay. The Pickens Blue Flames. And I guess they always said, well, the blue is the hottest part of the flame. So that's kind of what I thought. But yeah, I like that. So what was the original name?
That we have teased many times and will not share.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
This could be the first time right here making history for the Christian metal group who loves you so much.
See, here's the thing. It's really dumb, and we all hate it now.
That's for us to decide.
So we don't want to embarrass ourselves any more than we already do, because we don't need people going like, that's the name they were going to go with.
Really?
I mean, how much more could you embarrass yourself? Let's be honest here.
Tell the truth. I have a side project coming out.
I mean, we're making history here, man.
I tell you what, if I can get 15 people, 15 in the Blue Fire Horizon DMs asking what the original name was going to be, I will make a post about it. Okay.
Done.
There you go. That's
fair enough.
You guys don't count though. You guys don't count. The admins and mods of the group don't count. It's got to be other people.
We got it, man. All right. So and I know you briefly talked about this at the beginning. What's the history behind each one of the podcasts? So you got Christian Storytellers, Godly Fathers, The War is Everything, Roaring Rockets, and The Topic is Everything. That's another one?
Has The Topic is Everything actually released anything yet?
I don't know if they've released anything, but it's part of Blue Fire Digital Network, right?
Yes.
So just tell us a little bit, like, if somebody is going to go listen to them, what
Yeah.
what are they going to get?
So I don't think the topic is everything has released its first episode yet. I think that's coming up, but that is with that was kind of an offshoot of the Warriors Everything podcast. Anyone who was a regular listener to the Warriors Everything podcast, we've had Keebler McKay from Collapse Revive on like 10 different episodes. And a lot of the time it was, oh shoot, we could not get a guest for this week. Hey Keebler, you want to jump on and we can address a different topic within the church, within the world, within Christianity? And that's what we would do. And we'd sit down and discuss that. And that kind of went to an, well, Keebler wanted to, let's take this. And instead of making it, instead of randomly being a part of the War is Everything podcast, let's take this idea and make it its own podcast to address different topics within the church, within the world, different things that we Christians, consider controversial or have issues with that, we can sit down and discuss it. So I don't think that one's actually released any episodes yet. Maybe I could be wrong. Hunter does a lot of the organization of it, but that's what that one is. I know Morgan with the Godly Fathers podcast, he really a lot of what he does is very centered around Tundra, his band. And he really didn't want that podcast to be part of Tundra because it's such a different thing from the band. Yeah. So he had brought it up to Hunter, and Hunter's like, hey, we've got this network we're trying to get started. Why don't you, jump on this and, do it as a part of this. So that started with him. His wife was, I think, about 7 months pregnant when he started the podcast. And a lot of it was, he was learning a ton, being a first time dad and going through all of it the first time. And he's like, you know what? There are a lot of things that I'm going through right now that I had no idea about, that I'm sure there are tons of other men that have no idea about. So why don't I create a podcast and talk about the things as I learn them, so that down the road, other men can listen to it and learn about it,
Yeah, sure. It's awesome.
Yeah, I love it. Yo, so what criteria do you use when selecting the bands that you play? Do you limit your guests on these podcasts to Christians?
So for the War is Everything podcast, yes, it is only Christian bands. The whole goal of the podcast is to give just an extra voice to other artists that they're small time, like us, but it gives them another audience that they can connect with. And we've got plenty of listeners that have told us, hey, never heard of this band before you guys had them on the podcast. They were great, and I'm a big fan now. The only limit we really have is, are they Christians? Great. Because we understand that there are different denominations. Everyone's at different points in their walk with Christ. We've had Pentecostals, we've had Calvinists like Hunter, we've had Catholics, we've had Lutherans, we've had, everything under the entire umbrella of Christianity, and Hunter and I have an understanding that, okay, if any of them say anything that's like straight up heretical, like we'll address it later. We'll just edit that out of the podcast. Thankfully, we haven't had anybody that has said anything that's like outright heretical or, blasphemous or anything like that we've had to edit out. We've had a couple that Hunter and I kind of looked at each other and went, okay, that's a little bit of a gray area, but okay.
That's awesome. I mean, that's really in line with the mission of the Christian Metal Group, because we have literally Christians and atheists too, but from all over the world. Mm-hmm. And part of our mission statement is to help lesser known bands get noticed and promote them. And also, man, I love that y'all do that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's super awesome.
Yeah. And if anyone in a lesser known band is watching this, listening to this right now, and has not been on our podcast, reach out so we can get you on the podcast. Because not going to lie, we are almost 90 episodes in. Mm-hmm. It starts to get a little tough to find more bands to get on. And, we have repeat guests from time to time when they release new music and stuff, but it's always more fun to, get new guests on, give them an opportunity. So yeah, reach out to us if you guys want to be on a podcast.
Sure. Still. You ready, Jimmy? I think you can. I'll let you take 12 and 13.
Okay. What's the most controversial topic you've discussed on your podcast?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, we're going deep. We're gonna go deep.
Oh man, you're gonna make me think. I think I don't know that it. Okay, probably the most controversial thing that we brought up on the podcast was one of two things. We spent an entire episode with Keebler, one of the Topic is Everything episodes, mini series within the War is Everything podcast, talking about Tim Lambesis of As I Lay Dying.
Yeah.
So if you want to hear our thoughts on that, a lot of it centered around we don't know where he's at spiritually.
Right.
That's not for us to decide.
Yeah.
God is a good, gracious, merciful God that if Tim returns to him or has already, God will welcome him back with open arms. But it's not our place to constantly be berating him for things that happened in the past. Yeah, he did some stupid things, but
yeah, I remember that podcast. I feel like I handled it well, with grace. Part 2 is, what is your most memorable podcast?
I really enjoyed the one we did with Reclaim the Day. We're really good friends with them. Loved lots of laughs and good time with them. One thing that still sticks out to me, and it was like episode 7, actually, I think it's happened once since then, but I don't remember for sure. But only one guest has actually pulled his Bible out, like a leather bound Bible, to read it. Most people, if they're trying to think of a verse, they just quick Google it or something, but Johnny from Moth Altar, Jonathan Franco, he pulled out his leather bound Bible and actually looked stuff up and was, reading from it. So that kind of stood out.
The band is called Moth Altar.
Moth Altar, yes.
Oh, okay, that's one I don't know. So
you don't know that one. They are progressive metalcore.
I will check them out. Sure,
you should. They're very good.
Awesome.
Definitely gotta check them out. Cool. So I got a 2-part question also. So we got what is heavy metal to you? That's number 1. So keep that in mind. And then also I've been when I've been driving lately, I've been listening to a lot of liquid metal. We don't have CDs in our cars anymore. I got a newer car, don't have a CD player in there. So, I know it's a bummer, right, Jimmy? It's so I
was sad when my new car didn't have a cassette player,
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So I'm listening, to basically Sirius XM, and I mean the last month or so, it has not turned away from liquid metal. So whenever I'm not listening to songs from my phone, it's liquid metal all the way. But in doing so, one thing that I've really been noticing a lot lately is the differences between maybe old school metal and new school metal. And I know that we talked about this already. It's talking about if Striper had started now, they'd be a lot more accepted, and their music styles probably for most people more considered hard rock. But yeah, what's your point of view about old school and new school metal after you talk about what heavy metal is to you? And what I mean by that is especially with production. I think about I think I described it recently, new school metal as maybe get some Meshuggah riffs. You have a vocalist doing some impending doom type vocals, and then on top of that you have somebody doing some under oath type cleans, and then you have and then below that you got to have a blast beat in there somewhere, and then you have Yanni in the background playing keyboards, some new age with some ambient keyboards in the background. But yeah, that seems like a direction for a lot of the newer metal. And it's just become interesting to me, the I guess the contrast between the old school and the new school, because the old school is just thrash death, or hard rock or whatever, or even Iron Maiden. So it was a lot more defined. But yeah, so Yeah, give me some of your thoughts about that after you talk about what heavy metal is to you.
So, I mean, pretty much most of my life revolves around metal. Like I listen to it. I mean, I work 10 hours a day and I have music playing pretty much all 10 hours.
Nice.
And guess what? 95% of my playlist is metal, you know? So, in the hierarchy of my life, I suppose there's God, my family, my friends, metal, like,
Yeah.
But as far as I was actually just having a conversation with someone from another band not long ago about like the production of older metal, because he told me that I don't like deathcore. I'm like, I do. That's a lot of what I listen to is deathcore. It's just modern deathcore. He's like, well, if you don't like old school Whitechapel and Suicide Silence and Old Chelsea Grin and all those, and Bring Me the Horizon and bands like that, you don't like deathcore. I'm like, okay, there are a lot of newer bands. I'll use for a Christian example, the new Glay album. Loved it. It was great because it had the sound of classic deathcore with modern production.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing I don't like about classic deathcore is the production just sounds like crap.
Wow.
It just does, and a lot of like, I listen to older, even 80s metal, and I listen to it. I'm like, the guitars, they're not as punchy to me.
Yeah.
They don't have the modern production quality. I have my issues with 80s metal because I can't stand the high falsetto.
That
has always been my biggest turn off when it comes to Striper is that, the music, I could take it or leave it too, but the really high, no thanks, but yeah, I think that, and listening to like classic 90s death metal, bands like Mortification or
Skillet.
did you say Skillet? But bands like that, and it's like I have a hard time getting into it because the production, the metal is unique in how it gets mixed,
mm-hmm.
and in the production of it, that it's taken 20-30 years to really get that production to where like it sounds really good now. So I think people who listened to the 80s and 90s and early 2000s stuff, whether it's power metal or thrash or death metal or the early stages of deathcore in the mid 2000s, they love it because that's what they grew up with. Yeah. But now me coming into it years later, it's like you listen to, one thing that, sorry, it's not a Christian band, but it has been on repeat for me is the new Chelsea Grin album.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I don't like old Chelsea Grin.
Right.
Even though it's literally the same band.
Yeah.
But 15 years ago, their production quality just wasn't there,
Wow.
So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for me is, a lot of people, they grow up with certain bands and certain styles, and that makes, them love it. But
yeah, that's a good point. I think part of that, and Jay can attest to this, is a lot of those, they're starting out and they're like, well, I'm doing it for the Lord. Well, your music sucks. You're supposed to give your best. And it was also very prevalent in the rap and hip hop.
Oh God, yes.
The early albums, and it's like, yeah, your lyrics are on fire, but the music is awful, or the production is awful. And when you got somebody that come along and they put those two together, man, they changed the game.
Mm-hmm.
So wrapping up here, we just got a few more. What are a few of, let's say three to five of your newest favorite bands? Newer, 5 years or less, maybe.
It took me embarrassingly long, but Earth Groans.
Oh yeah.
It took me a while to get over Jeremy Schaefer. his vocals, he does one thing. It's a lot of mid-range false chord screams. That's it.
He's got a pretty sick mustache though.
Once I came to the realization, like, yeah, he does one thing, but he's really, really good at it.
Right.
It kind of clicked for me, and I love the dissonance in their guitars. Let's see, you're asking for like what I'm really listening to now, and this is Christian metal thing. So I'm trying to keep it to Christian bands, you know, so people can go and check them out. Let's see. I really love the new Amongst the Giants EP, Desolate Minds. That was absolutely phenomenal. I just started getting into Then It Ends, which I don't know why I haven't been listening to them before, but whatever. And then for something that's not metal, I've been listening to a lot of Shane and Shane lately. CCM is not really my thing, but I don't know. They do it better. So
nice. Hey, it's not my thing either, but there's always that one or two bands in there that, man, I can just really dig, you know. That's awesome.
Yeah, awesome. So, of course, your band, especially I think in our group, your band is definitely one of the most popular ones. So you've done a great job with promotions for sure. But let's talk about, you know, we talked about ministry versus industry, but do you consider your band a ministry? And how do you deal with the relative fame, should we say, or, you know, just becoming more well-known? Yeah, there you go, quote unquote, right? Yeah.
100% a ministry. I just brought it up. Someone was asking about why we promote the way we do.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, really, the reason is our target audience is not Christian metal fans.
Right.
Our target audience is the lost, the ones that, you know, need to hear the message.
Mm-hmm.
And we promote within Christian groups in the same way that I see when a missionary needs to go make is going to Africa for 2 years, they do a tour through churches in the US to raise support, raise funds, and then they go and reach the lost. So we promote within Christian groups because we know, let's be real, in order to continue this ministry, we need money.
Yes.
We do some songs that are more targeted toward Christians and more merch and stuff that's more targeted toward Christians because we know, hey, they're going to buy some. We can use that to make better music, to make better production that we can use to reach the lost. But in the end, we try to make sure that the lyrics of most of our songs are gospel centric, not messages to Christians, but a message of hope to people who aren't Christians, who are struggling. So we gather support from Christians, but we make jokes and we make memes and all that because that's something that people who aren't Christians can relate to. They can see that and be like, those guys are funny. And then they can start following us, listen to the music. And that's where they hear the message of the gospel, is through the lyrics of the music. So we don't constantly post about our faith on our Facebook page or anything, because there are people that would start following us for the jokes, see us talking about our faith and be like, not really for me. And then they don't hear the message of the gospel through the lyrics. So not that we don't share our faith, but we back off of it a little bit. It's a fine line between, okay, we don't want to abandon talking about our faith, but we don't want to talk about it too much to where it becomes detrimental to us being able to reach the lost.
There are a lot of people who are not, you know, Christians in the Christian metal group as well. Just like there are people in churches seats that aren't Christians, you know, it happens. So, So, all right, here's a very serious question. How do you know Keebler, and is he an elf?
So Keebler, we just met because we're both in the Christian metal scene and interactions together and stuff. And the first time we really talked to him was the first time he came on our podcast. He did tell the story of where Keebler came to be, that nickname. I hope I remember this correctly. I'm 90% certain this is how it went down, or similar to this. His uncle, I think it was his uncle, some sort of friend or family member, was super high and looked at him and went, you know, you look just like a Keebler elf. And it just it stuck.
Yeah.
It just stuck. So you can thank his uncle or his friend or whoever it was that was high on pot that, told him
And
he looks like Keebler Elf.
what's his band's name? Give them a plug.
Collapse Revive. They are
Nice.
phenomenal. They just released a new song like last month that's just amazing. Go and check them out.
Nice. All right. Well, we're definitely down to the last questions now. So, as far as bands that want to be on the show, I know we talked about contacting you. So let's talk about how to contact you.
bluefirehorizonband@gmail.com, or you can message the band on Facebook or Instagram. Otherwise, Hunter Chapin and Zachariah Turnage on Facebook. Our DMs are always open. You can contact either of us.
Cool, very cool. We'll have to put that, like, those links on the video when it comes out.
So wrapping it up here, how can we, me and the Christian metal group as a whole, and just our fans and people, the metal community, how can we help support your ministry? What can we do for your ministry?
Pray for us first
Nice.
and foremost. That's the biggest thing, because our goal is to try to reach the lost, and we need the power of prayer behind us. Second, share our music with your unsaved metal friends.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones that need to hear it. Third, if you want to support us financially, bluefirehorizon.com. We have our merch store on there. You can buy our CD. We've got lots of different merch options. You can order something from there.
I just love it. Well, man, I really appreciate your time. And we will get this out to everybody and look forward to hearing new music when you got it released, and as well as your new podcast. How often do you release podcasts on Blue?
The War is Everything podcast is weekly. The Christian Storyteller Chronicles is bi-weekly. The Godly Fathers podcast is whenever Morgan has time. It's been about once a month. And then I'm not sure about the new one because the first episode just dropped today.
Nice. And also, if somebody has a Christian themed podcast, they can reach out to you for that as well, right?
Yeah, you can reach out to us. Hunter is the one that kind of vets everyone for, whether or not to bring them on our network. But yeah, if you run a podcast and you think, hey, I'd be interested in kind of joining that conglomerate, reach out.
Awesome.
Cool.
All right.
God bless
Keep
you.
God first and keep it metal.
Thanks,
That's right.
guys. Appreciate it.
Peace.